And we're moving to Ukraine. The Ukrainian government has advised civilians to leave Donetsk and Luhansk, heightening fears that the army is planning to enter the rebel-held eastern cities, while saying today that Russia has massed 45,000 troops on the joint border. More from i24News reporter Danny Swibel.
Residents of the eastern Ukrainian city of Donesk woke this morning to the sound of shelling, with the situation growing so intense that some were forced to take shelter underground. Donesk, a once bustling metropolis of nearly 1 million people, is facing an increasing shortage of food, water, and electricity. Armed separatists can still be seen on the streets, but many residents are increasingly frightened to leave their homes.
We are hiding from the bombs. Why are we here? Shells are flying over our heads. Here and there, people are dying. How many people from Donetsk have already died? It's horrible.
The Ukrainian military said on Monday it was preparing for a final stage of taking Donetsk back from the pro-Russians after making significant gains that split the rebel forces opposing them.
We also once again call on civilians to leave urgently the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, if possible, because an operation will be held there to liberate those cities and kill the terrorists.
Later on Sunday, a Ukrainian artillery shell hit a prison on the outskirts of Donetsk, killing 1 inmate and injuring 3 others. More than 100 prisoners escaped from the maximum security facility for dangerous criminals after the shell struck, though at least 34 have since been recaptured. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed that it is essential to return to the ceasefire signed between Ukrainian authorities and pro-Russian rebels in April. But it appears that as the Ukrainian military begins its current campaign to snatch control back from the rebels, the request has fallen on deaf ears.
And with me right now on set is Middle East Bureau Chief for Russia Today, Paula Sleer. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. You spent a lot of time reporting about the Ukrainian crisis, and you spent a lot of time in Donetsk. What made the changing point? How come it changed that right now the Ukrainians are taking over or trying to take over?
I mean, it's such a valid question. If you and I were having this discussion even a month ago, I would have said to you that the pro-Russian fighters inside eastern Ukraine are winning. They certainly have been winning. And it was today, 3 months ago, that Novorossiya was formed, which was the new republic by Donetsk and Lugansk. They had a referendum. They asked people, do you want to be part of Russia or do you want to separate from Kiev? The overwhelming majority voted to separate from Kiev, so they declared this new union, and they were hoping to join with Russia. And now, a month later, or 3 months since that date, we're witnessing city by city, village by village in eastern Ukraine fall to the Ukrainian army.
Is there some kind of a diplomatic, let's say, strategic move from Putin that he's deciding to pull back in this?
Well, at this stage, he's actually keeping quiet and watching events unfold. I think there might be frustration. In fact, I'm sure there is amongst some of the pro-Russian fighters on the ground, that they were perhaps hoping that Russia would come to their aid more than they did. The latest diplomatic moves have been phone calls from Barroso of the European Union. He phoned Putin earlier today and urged him not to send troops into eastern Ukraine. At the same time, Putin responded by saying that Russia was sending a humanitarian convoy. But of course, that's going to raise eyebrows in the West, and the concern will be that a humanitarian convoy might actually be military supplies, and questions will be asked around that. At the same time, Barroso spoke with the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, urging him to have some kind of dialogue. But the situation on the ground is far from any kind of talks.
What is happening right now on the ground?
Lugansk is in the hands of the Ukrainian military. There is no gas, no water, no electricity in the city. It's being called a dead city, and we're hearing reports of people literally drinking puddles from the streets. More people are dying right now in Lugansk from lack of water than from bullets. The statistics stand at something like 6 civilians are dying a day, which some might think is actually a relatively low figure. And I say that in inverted commas because you have very few people who are still in eastern Ukraine. You have some 2 million Ukrainians who have fled to Russia and who are currently living as refugees inside Russia. Now, as we speak, the city of Donetsk is on the brink of being raided by the Ukrainian military, and they have urged people to leave. Most people, as I say, have left, but you have old people who simply cannot leave. They're just unable to physically take themselves out of the city. And I was just reading a report earlier that that city is called the city of stray dogs. And that is because so many people have left and their dogs have remained. And so you just see these stray dogs walking the streets of Donetsk.
So what is the next step? What is, let's say, from both sides, from Ukraine and from Russia, what are they playing? Because if it is reaching to this point, maybe we'll start seeing again people protesting on the streets?
Well, a lot of people are saying that that's what is going to happen, because parallel to all of this is the economic situation. The country is spending millions of dollars a day in terms of its military operation in the east. There are thousands of soldiers who've been killed. There are thousands of civilians who've been killed. There are thousands of pro-Russian fighters who've been killed. And winter is approaching, and in June, Russia cut energy supplies to Ukraine. There are now sanctions that Russia has imposed on Ukraine. Ukraine has imposed on Russia, but it's not exactly a huge thing for the Russians. So the analysis is that as winter comes closer, more people are going to take to the streets. People simply cannot make ends meet. People are cold, and people potentially are going to have a second revolution.
6 people a day. We've been talking about the Israeli-Gaza situation maybe for too long without seeing what is happening in the rest of the world. Thank you very much for this.
My pleasure.